Although I have never served personally, I did militia shit for a while and have heard plenty of stories from game wardens slash park rangers. Be park ranger in some national park. Had issues with people who went off trails, mostly drunks and tourists, and said ranger would be forced to go out there and get them. A lot of the time it's pretty bog standard. Drunk idiots tend to be injured with sprung or broken ankles, and the tourists just got lost because they were following wildlife with cameras. One day this starts changing. The tourists start disappearing off trails and for some reason are not being found. Mind you, it's still a national park, so the reality of the situation is some probably got injured and fell victim to the elements or predation by local wildlife. And then they started finding remains. At first it was pretty standard fare, but some of the bodies started to really bug our ranger friend. Some of them had obvious man-made marks, such as stabbing wounds, gunshots, etc. Every time this would happen, they would be instructed to just file it under the same as the rest. Just another lost tourist or drunk that got injured and died from the elements. Ranger friend is obviously a bit peeved about filing possible murder cases as misadventure and tries to look into it. Other rangers are also a bit peeved, but the old breed rangers, like guys with 10+ years experience, are adamant that everyone just lets it go. Ranger friend tries to pry information from the older guys, but at first is stonewalled to hell and back. Always a ring around about how it could just be a case of suicide. Ranger friend is not buying this shit, decides to wait till after work, and gets one of the older guys to go drinking. After getting this old guy sufficiently buzzed, the old guy finally loosens his lips. The reality of the situation is mundane, but terrifying nonetheless. Most national parks are prowled by a serial killer or two. These serial killers get gratification from hunting people who stray from the trails. Most of them hunt with knives, spears, and bows, keeping it silent aside from the sudden scream and gasp of air, leaving someone's lungs after a lung shot. If you have realized that this sounds a lot like those missing 411 cases, well, congrats. You are correct. The vast majority of missing 411 cases are simply down to serial killers which hunt people in national parks. So why is the Park Service not telling people about this? Simple. Why would you scare your cash cows away from national parks? No tourist, no money. Simple as can be. If you look at some serial killers that have been caught, you will actually see them talk about how they prey on people in national parks. Donald Leroy Evans, the rest stop killer, stated he killed over 70. Marvin Gray claimed to have killed 41, with several in national parks. If I remember correctly, there was a duo that claimed they killed over 200, but I cannot remember their names for the life of me. Either way, Anons, just make sure you follow the trails and pack heat while camping.
I don't know if this is a LARP, but when I was a cop, I had shooting cases get pushed under a rug, and I was ordered not to pursue charges. Punished when I tried to anyway as well. That shit happens, usually to avoid bad press or bad stats.
It mostly tends to be the larger departments. You ever heard of that one case in Arkansas? Namely, the deaths of Don Henry and Kevin Ives. Shit reeks to high hell of corruption. 2 teenagers went in a woods to do some spotlight hunting for nocturnal game. Both teens meet other teens who had heard a rumor about some pot grow, and they decide to look for it. Although they separated a small distance, they were all in earshot of each other. The 2 that initially came for hunting, Don Henry and Kevin Ives, end up bumping into a group of adults walking around the woods at night. Adults seem peeved that these kids are there and start demanding to know what they are doing. Both teens try to play it off, and the other teens who heard the commotion watched from nearby brush. Teens in bush saw them move into another area and then heard the sound of gunshots and yelling. Don and Kevin ran off and were later found, berated, and got the shit kicked out of them by local police, who forced them into the back of a cruiser. Don and Kevin afterwards were found sleeping on a nearby railroad track with a blue tarp covering them. Both got pile-drived by a train, but enough material was present to show that they had been dead for some time. Every witness that came forward regarding what they saw the night they went missing was either killed, died in a car accident, or intimidated by local police. CIA and FBI has a file that's pretty much black bars for days. Several officers, district attorneys, and even Bill Clinton, then governor, have been connected to the case and local drug and human trafficking rings. My personal view is the local department was involved with the trade, and the kids came across a bunch of officers on a drop pickup. The mother of one of them fought until her dying day by putting up a website which documented and cataloged witness accounts from people in the area. It's depressing, and I hope she's at peace with her boys.
I'll Greentext this shit for the sake of tradition. Be me, just out of the military. Bro, we'll call him Bill, works for State Forestry and Fire Lookout Tower. Pretty dope. Basically a mini apartment. Even has internet. Invites me to stay with him a few days. Basically hang out and play board games / vidya. Awesome view. Shows me how to work Firefinder thing and call in a fire. I ask what weird shit he's seen. He's pretty solemn about this and doesn't seem okay talking. Anon, I'll tell you, man, but you can't freak out if you see this shit. At this point, I'll change perspective. He had more than one story. Story 1. Watching out across the forest one day, pretty chill. Saw a structure. Not stairs, an actual structure of some sort, couldn't tell. People were around it. Called it in. Gave coordinates. Game warden says he will investigate in AM. It's too late in the day. They're discussing this via radio. Radio chatter interrupted. Unfamiliar. Disregard all. This conversation is over. Comms cut off on radio. Just uses phone. Call disconnected. Cell has no signal now, despite having perfect signal before. The structure is still there. Gets a phone call. It's his supervisor. Bill, leave this one be. Don't talk about it. Don't log it. Drop it. Confused, asking what the deal is. Bill, you're not in trouble. Just forget seeing it. You'll be fine. Bill complies, removes log entries. Phone rings again. Same voice as guy on radio that broke comms. Listen to boss name. He's taking care of you. Bill says he understands. Doesn't want trouble. I will not have to call you again, voice says. Night falls. Bill sleep. Next morning, Bill looks where the structure was. It's not there. The clearing it was in is gone. Nothing but trees, as if this never happened. Fast forward a few years. This structure pops up sometimes in different places. Out of nowhere. Just there. It's different, but can't tell what it is. Can't determine purpose or even clear shape. Story 2. Bill finished the day's watch. Mild thunderstorm, but tower is safe. Chilled out getting some vidya games. Power goes out suddenly. Bill looks to see if lightning strike, sees nothing, waits it out, hears clung, clung, clung from steps as if someone is climbing. No houses for miles, no vehicles seen approaching from the road. Bill grabs flashlight and rifle. Clung, 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 stops. Hey, it's bad weather, let me in, voice says underneath the building. Bill says, this is state property. You cannot be here, sir. Leave or I'll call the sheriff. Bill can't see anyone through windows. It's pouring rain, thunder, and lightning. Voice keeps calling, let me in, it's bad weather. Voice is not panicked, states it as if it were just a simple, calm request. Can't see anything, goes out with rifle. Still repeating the same thing, let me in, it's bad weather, down the steps. Bill says, I have a gun, sheriff is coming, leave. Same phrase, further down the steps. Bill can't see the source. Bill goes in, locks up, and calls sheriff. No more voice. Sheriff shows up, looks around. Weather calming down a lot, so both go down. Something stinks. Bill and sheriff look in Bill's truck. Deer, bobcat, coyote. More than one, maybe 3 dead rotting animals just laying back there and a lot of mud. Sheriff says it might be someone pulling a sick joke. Drives around, Bill goes back up. Sheriff goes to Bill's truck and then calls up. Why did you move it? Needed pictures, Bill? Bill is confused. The animals had been removed from his truck. Bill calls supervisor. Supervisor shows up and puts hunting rifle and shotgun under sofa compartment. This stays here if it's needed. Supervisor wouldn't speculate, but had 0 doubts at all.
Member of local militia, not stereotypical fat drunken rednecks, several ex and current military, several ex and current cops, a lawyer and a CEO of a small company who helped bankroll the group, and about a dozen others who work in construction, IT, etc. I'm a school teacher, ex-cop. We do search and rescue for the local national forest, helped with rescue and relief efforts after a tornado destroyed a town in the next county, raise funds for charity, etc. Also volunteer with local Boy Scouts and 4-H group, teaching wilderness survival skills, marksmanship, etc., and taking them camping, field exercise one summer, patrolling with blanks, and getting ready for an Op 4 event. It's dark, we're all gearing up, and we hear gunshots a couple of miles away. Don't know who else is out here, but decide to postpone shooting a bunch of blanks so we don't scare any campers. Red distress flare goes up on the other side of the hill. Check CB and ham radio. Nothing. Another flare, then more gunshots. We launch a green flare to signal that we see their distress flare and are coming to help. Radio the sheriff that something is fucky, and swap gear. A couple guys put on reflective vests for search and rescue, and everybody swaps blanks for live rounds. One group stays at camp, another group jumps in a couple SUVs and drives down the road in the direction of the flares, and the rest of us set out on foot. We're thinking it might be a camper or hunter getting attacked by a bear or wolves and needing help. The gunshots seem panicked, not fired in threes to signal distress. None of us are in stealth mode. We've all got flashlights, chem lights, and reflective vests to provide as much visibility as possible. We hear a couple more gunshots, and then it goes quiet. Base camp says they haven't seen any more flares. Detour around a sudden crevasse. Everyone is loud to ensure nobody accidentally falls in or gets separated, and the guys in the lead are calling out to anyone that needs help. Suddenly, one of the guys yells, "Who's that?" We're all shining flashlights in the direction he's pointing. Nobody sees anything. He insists he saw someone step behind a tree when he shined his flashlight that way. We call out, get no response. A couple guys go to investigate, don't find anyone. Just the shadows playing tricks on the kid. Continue toward where we think the flares came from. Launch another green flare so base camp can compare our position with where the distress flares came from. We're close. Group in the cars can't get to us. Road turned unexpectedly. They're heading back to camp. We all hear a generator off in the distance and shout if anyone needs help, wave our lights around. A few minutes later, we step into a clearing. Pickup with a small trailer attached, generator powering the trailer, campfire that's mostly embers, a couple lawn chairs set up, one that's tipped over. Whoever was here dropped their food on the ground, plates and hot dogs scattered near each chair. Call out, get no response. Trailer and truck are empty. Investigation reveals a bunch of 9mm brass around the campsite. More is inside the trailer along with an empty Glock magazine. Looks like whoever was shooting started outside, then went inside, reloaded, and shot through the windows and walls. No gun, no people. Find an orange plastic flare gun and 2 spent shells next to a cell phone just outside the campsite, along with more 9mm brass. We spread out, calling out for anyone who needs help and searching the area. Base camp says sheriff is on his way. This is super creepy. Where the hell are these people and who or what were they shooting at? Suddenly hear, "Who's there?" shouted on the other side of the campsite. One of the guys says he saw a really tall person step behind a tree. We investigate, don't find anyone. Decide to all leave the campsite so we don't contaminate any evidence more than we already have, and wait for the sheriff. Flashlights off, just our chem lights glowing while we talk with each other about what the hell is going on. "Hey, you see that?" We all wait, and a few seconds later there's a dim flash of blue in the trees. What is that? We don't see the blue flash again, but there's a dim red glow high in the trees off to the right of where we saw it. Decide to investigate. Somebody may be hurt, or it could be a fire. As we get closer, everyone starts feeling uneasy, like there's a pressure in the back of their head. I'm starting to feel nauseous, like I've got a bad migraine. Suddenly, we're all blinded by a beam of light coming from the tops of the trees. We shine our lights right back and yell for whoever it is to get the light out of our eyes. The light moves, suddenly darting to another tree about 30 yards away, still pointing at us. At this point, I'm thinking, drone. The jumpy kid decides to be an idiot and takes a shot at the light. The light vanishes, and while half of us are chewing his ass out, the other half, myself included, are still looking for the source of the light. Eyes still dazzled, even with my 200 lumen tactical light, it's hard to make anything out. Suddenly hear something crash through the brush off to my right, spin and catch what looks like a really tall person ducking behind the bushes. "Hey!" I give chase. Buddy runs after me. Right as I get to where I saw the person, it suddenly feels like somebody dumped ice water on me. I fall and can hear my buddy fall right behind me. I try to get back up, but I can't move or even talk. Next thing I know, I'm on my back with our medic shining his light in my eyes, slapping me on the cheek and asking if I'm okay. Apparently my buddy and I both passed out at the same time. Tell them what I saw, get told that everybody searched the area after we collapsed and found nothing. We're both sitting against a tree discussing what happened. Buddy didn't see anything and was just following me. Guy in charge decides we're staying put and not searching any further until the sheriff arrives. Sheriff is at base camp. Some of our guys are going to lead him and a couple deputies to us. We launch a parachute illumination flare, turns the whole area into daylight for a few seconds and shows our position. Sheriff shows up 30 minutes later. Impressive, given the terrain and darkness. Sheriff and deputies check out the campsite. We tell them everything we experienced. Sheriff knows where the trail the campers drove in on meets the road, radios in for more deputies to join him. Sheriff and deputies are going to stay at campsite and secure it. We're heading back to base camp and then home. Buddy and I are fine, walk back with everyone else. Don't see or hear anything unusual the entire way back. Pack our shit and everybody goes home. Spend the next month talking about how weird that was. Some guys are convinced there was a drone and we stumbled across a drug deal gone bad or a government kidnapping. Others are 100% on board with the idea it was a UFO. I don't know what the hell to think. Sheriff traced truck and camper back to family from out of state, never found anybody, and they were declared missing. 2 years later, still no trace of them. We still camp and train out there, but new policy is shoot any UFOs or drones on site. No mysterious disappearances or unexplained lights since.